Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me just, I just want to be clear about this. Imagine that imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but no, this is what's happening. Imagine if I'd said to law firms that were representing parties that were upset with policies my administration had initiated, that you will not be allowed into government buildings. We will punish you economically for dissenting from the Affordable Care Act or the Iran deal. We will ferret out students who protest against my policies. It's unimaginable that the same parties that are silent now would have tolerated behavior like that from me or a whole bunch of my predecessors. So, and I say this not on a partisan basis. This has to do with something more precious, which is, who are we as a country and what values do we stand for?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter, and this is In Time. I've got to tell you, news today is like herding cats, and the other thing is it's like a Gordian knot. You pull on one thread, and oh my God, and then I'm up here mixing 20 different metaphors. It's insane. We have a breaking story, which I really hope is on the front page of every American newspaper when we wake up tomorrow. So we mentioned earlier that Tulsi Gabbard had, a whistleblower had said that basically 8 months ago she had received some form of information. She classified it and buried it. And we had discussed that, in our view, it was most likely from the NSA. If it was from any other organization, should actually have a little bit of a harder time doing that. The NSA is so secret that, it used to be called no such agency was the joke, that they don't exist. And so, if, you get leaks out of the CIA or FBI, you don't get leaks out of the NSA. Well, in this case, this would be the exception, I suppose, because a whistleblower had said that this report had been sent to her and promptly buried. Now, in general, she's got 30 days to notify Congress when she gets something like this, and she has 30 days to notify them when there is a whistleblower complaint, which she also buried. So what was the initial report? We have learned today that the initial report was an intercepted phone call by the NSA between a foreign intelligence and an individual close to Trump. So somebody in Trump's inner circle had a phone conversation with foreign intelligence, and the NSA intercepted it and was so concerned about it that they kicked it up the chain. When it got to Tulsi Gabbard, rather than, and by the way, she doesn't have 30 days at that point. She is required to report it to Congress as soon as she is reasonably able. That is the standard. It's not 30 days anymore when it's a somebody in the White House and the NSA has kicked up the foreign intelligence contacting a member of the U.S. government. So what does she do? Took a copy of the report and gave it to his chief of staff, Donald Trump's chief of staff. So she notified the White House of a potential leak or whatever before notifying any investigators. There's maybe a suspect in the White House, and she notified the potential suspects and then buried the report. And that report has been buried for 8 months. Nobody knows what's in it. All we know is that it's an intercepted phone call between a foreign intelligence and someone close to Donald Trump. And Tulsi Gabbard, head of the National Intelligence, meaning she oversees FBI, CIA, and NSA, got this report, told everybody to shut up, buried the report, save for giving a copy to Trump's chief of staff. So my hope is that this outrages Congress. I've got to tell you the amount of things that should be outraging Congress at this point. I'd like to see a show where I don't say this should outrage Congress. I don't think I've said that in many a show. She's doing exactly what she's supposed to be doing, in as much as we know why she was she knew nothing about foreign intelligence or domestic intelligence when she took this position. She was completely unqualified, except for her loyalty, and she has now demonstrated that. It looks like by doing this, she has probably violated several laws. I doubt that Trump's chief of staff, and I've forgotten her name, but I doubt she was in a position to be read in at the level that this was classified. And since she saw it before Trump did, it was probably illegal to give it to her. It was illegal not to give it to Congress and to brief Congress, and it was illegal to bury it in the first place. So this is pretty shocking stuff. Meanwhile, the gerrymandering continues. Trump asked that Republican states gerrymander in favor of the Republicans for the upcoming midterm elections. That is unprecedented. It previously had been illegal, and under previous Supreme Courts, anything like that would have been, and has been. It was the Supreme Court that enforced Title IX on numerous states, including Alabama, that had been redistricting specifically to eliminate the ability for blacks to have any representation in Congress. So as of this moment, Texas has successfully redistricted. They were blocked at the federal level, but it went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court even said that the Supreme Court went so far as to say that it doesn't matter if they're redistricting for political reasons. It doesn't matter if they're redistricting explicitly for political gain. None of these things matter. They can district any way they want to, and that's that. But what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and when California came up with the same, reached the Supreme Court, they let the California's map stand as well. So both California and Texas have redistricted explicitly for one reason only, to give representatives of their preferred party an advantage come the midterm elections. So far, 9 more seats have been added for the Republicans between Texas, Missouri, North Carolina, and Ohio. Democrats have picked up 6 seats between California and Utah. Right now, Virginia came up with a map that was going to add 5 more. It got rejected, and now they're coming up with a map. It hit a legal snafu within the state, but they have said today that they think they can come up with 10 more, which would essentially eliminate every single Republican but one. They said 10 or 11, so if they go for 11, there won't be any Republican congressman out of Virginia. I don't know how, if they failed at 5, they're going to do 10. Maryland has just gotten out of committee. Maryland has only one Republican member of the House, so they have, if this succeeds, it will only add 1 to the Democrats, but it brings up kind of the problem with all of this, which is while the Democrats have to take the House, the Senate would be very, very nice too. Please don't get me wrong. If we can take all of Congress, we can actually start unwinding all of this. We can start enforcing law. There is a law on the tape. There's a law on, literally, Nixon tried to line item veto a budget. And he did this by withdrawing funds and saying, I'm just not going to fund it. And so Congress came up with the Anti-Impoundment Act, which said that the president was not allowed to impound funds. He had to fully fund every single project that Congress created by law. That's been around since Nixon. Clinton got slapped down for roughly the same thing. He tried the same trick. Congress said, nope. Now, Vladimir Trump is doing it, and they don't care. And he's wiped out a number of agencies that we're about to talk about. But we can start rolling a lot of that back if we get control of Congress and say, wait a minute, you've been breaking the law. He also gets impeached right away, which he admitted. He's like, listen, we have to win or else I get impeached. It's like, yeah, you think? You think if Democrats gain control of the House, they probably won't win the impeachment or the trial, but they're going to start slowing down his agenda a lot. But here's the problem. Let's assume you are a Republican in Maryland. And there are a decent number, not a huge number, but it's not trivial either. You now have no representation in Congress, or you won't have any, not a single representative representing your views out of your state in Congress. Probably going to make you move. Not right away, but over time, you're going to start to see people move into, and what we're going to have is, and Texas has essentially tried to do this, but failed. Texas wanted to redistrict in such a way that there were no Democrats. They just couldn't find a way to do it. Many states have been unable to do that so far, but we now have 2 states that, Maryland and Virginia, that are on the cusp of eliminating all Republican representatives to Congress out of that state. Meaning if you're a Republican, you are no longer welcome there in one way or another, whether it's explicit or not. The problem with that is that's just going to encourage more of that to the point where every state is all red or all blue. This is going to encourage violence between the states at the state level, not by individuals, but at the state level. We already almost had that, in as much as when a bunch of Democrats in Texas, in the Texas state legislature, said, yeah, we're out of here, and ran and went to, New York, and I think it was New York and Virginia. And they fled. And the reason they fled was because they didn't want to allow a quorum for this particular redistricting move. And as long as they weren't in the state, there was no quorum. Couldn't be done. So Abbott says, well, I'm going to send the Texas Rangers to go get them because, Texas Rangers and, okay, fine. Surprised you didn't send the Dukes of Hazzard. Really? But the problem is, outside of Texas, those Rangers have zero authority. None over anybody. So if they go to New York or Virginia and they find where these Democrats are hiding, what are they going to do? If it were Texas, they might be able to detain, arrest, and bring them somewhere. But they can't in another state. That's called kidnapping in another state because the other state does not recognize their credentials. Just like a police officer in New York can't go to Texas and just start arresting people. He doesn't have the ability. That's called kidnapping or wrongful detainment in Texas. So we came pretty close to a situation. I mean, imagine if they had done that. Abbott didn't in the end, which I was surprised by. But imagine if Abbott had sent his awesomest Rangers sent his Power Rangers to Virginia and New York. And they detained these guys, put them in a car against their will, and then got stopped by the police. They are guilty at this point of kidnapping. Period. End of discussion. So they get arrested and thrown in jail for kidnapping. Now, what's Abbott going to do? A whole bunch of his Rangers who have significant legal authority in his state have been arrested in another state for taking his own state's residents back so that they can vote, but they're not legally allowed to in that state. It's kidnapping there. Is he going to escalate? Is he going to deploy the National Guard? He's been eager to deploy the National Guard in other states. So what this is going to ultimately do, if we don't figure out a way to stop the whole point is that everybody in the state is supposed to have some form of representation. And it's not perfect, but that's how districts should be drawn. So if your state has 10% Republicans, it should have 10% of Republican congressmen. It's that simple. And that is no longer going to be the case. And I figure by another full election cycle, most states are going to be either all red or all blue. This is going to encourage situations like what we also had where Texas tried to sue who was it? It was, I think it was, it wasn't Alabama. They tried to sue one of the states that came back for Kamala Harris. No, oh, dear Lord. See, that's how I have to go back 2 elections. When Trump lost, Texas sued to get the vote overturned in 2 other states, saying that Texas's rights were being violated because their preferred candidate wasn't getting into office because of cheating in other states. Now, they didn't have standing to do it. But when states start suing other states and aggressively attacking other states, that's getting kind of close to a civil war. So, and this is just a step further in that process. Nonetheless, right now, I think we have to think a little bit more about just like getting through the midterms. But that's where we stand right now. It looks like by just redistricting, and you never know how these votes are going to turn out. And we already have had a major upset in Texas in one of the local votes. So Texas thinks they picked up 5 seats, but maybe not. At any rate, a total of 9 Republican seats, and I think it was 6 Democratic seats have been picked up by this redistricting. It's going to continue in a couple other states. And the Supreme Court, which previously has said, no, this is completely illegal, is just like, knock yourself out. We don't care why you're doing it. Just go ahead and do it. That's literally, that's what Mr. I Like Beer said. So, meanwhile, The Intercept is reporting that the U.S. has, or that they have discovered a previously unreported no-bid contract to Israel for $210 million to purchase what is in most cases banned cluster munitions. Now, the way these munitions work is you fire a round, and as it's on its way down, it basically deploys a whole bunch of cluster bombs. And these do not, in this particular case, my understanding is they don't explode on impact. They kind of swirl down. They can have these little things to help them like make a nice soft landing. And then a fuse on them explodes. So they blow from underneath, and they take out people's legs. And it's also designed, unfortunately, more to do severe damage to people without killing them, so that your enemy's army has to take care of more wounded. Which is, just, and I say unfortunately, is that unfortunate? It's a brutal way to fight. It's like, oh no, we have to make sure we maim as many people as possible, because if you kill them, then the enemy doesn't have to take care of them anymore. The problem is the fuses have a really bad failure rate. Currently, on average, for cluster munitions, 1 in 3 fail to go off. They're still armed. They will still detonate if they're played with, toyed with, or anything like that, but the timer that causes them to go off in a cloud and, kill everything in a whatever radius, the fuse just didn't go off. So they're banned in most countries. The U.S. and Israel are two that do not ban them. Russia does not ban them. Now, the U.S. has said we would ban them by 2019. We amended that to we're not going to ban them, but we will replace all the ones that have a 30% failure rate with ones that have a 1% or lower failure rate. The ones that we have purchased from Israel in testing have had less than a 1% failure rate. Most international organizations have said that's still way too high. There is no failure rate on these that's acceptable, and the reason is because let's say it's a 1%. You're deploying hundreds of these things, and so you're going to have, if you deploy if in one shot you deploy 100 of these things, you do a couple hundred shots, 1% of all of those, and those are just left around forever. Somebody could be just walking down a field 10 years later, and boom, it goes off. That's why they're banned. A couple of questions. One, why are we buying them from Israel? We can actually manufacture them and do manufacture them ourselves. 2, why are we buying them from Israel? 3, why are we buying them from Israel? 4, why was it a no-bid contract to buy them from Israel? Usually we're sending Israel weapons. In this case, we're buying them from Israel. Meanwhile, the United States has Trump has declared a 25% tariff on anybody who is trading with Iran, and this warning has been issued from the State Department. Leave Iran now. Have plans for departing Iran that does not rely on the U.S. government's help. Flight cancellations and disruptions are possible with little warning. Check directly with your airlines for updates. If you cannot leave, find a secure location within your residence or another safe building. Have a supply of food and water and medication and other essential items. Avoid demonstrations. No shit. Keep a low profile and stay away from your surroundings. Monitor local media for breaking news. Be prepared. Yeah, breaking from the Ayatollah. I'm sure that it's going to. Okay. Well, he can't propagandize any more than Trump, so I suppose. And keep your phone charged and maintain communication with your family and friends. This has been seen by many as this would be not a necessary step, I suppose, with Trump. But in most cases, if you're going to attack, you would issue that warning before an attack. Those warnings do get issued even without an attack, and sometimes we attack countries without issuing those warnings. But most people looking at that document say that we are, in fact, preparing to strike Iran within a couple of days. No more than 10, I think, was the highest estimate that I heard. Things could change. Captain Orange Ferret may just, whoa! I think that German Post really basically, there's the Epstein files. Well, we can't have people talking about that, so let's shoot somebody in the street. Oh, that's bad for press. We have to distract from that, so let's invade another country. Oh, shit, that pissed a lot of people off. What do we do? Let's release some more Epstein files. That'll change the topic. Dear God, I feel like I'm Dorothy in the tornado, and it's just like they just try to pick a news story out of thin air. It is so. My view is that any attack we do, I'm concerned. I am very concerned that any attack we do on Iran is going to be superficial. The attacks that we did last time, where we obliterated their entire nuclear capability, our own intelligence assessments and the intelligence assessments of multiple other Western countries say we had zero impact on the currently existing uranium. We missed it all. And we set back the production of more uranium by 2 months. 2 months. That's all we did. So My suspicion is he's going to do it as a show of force and then reach a deal. They're already talking about a deal. We had on Alex. If you haven't seen our interview with Alex, for some reason it wasn't showing on our channel, so I just put it in the center for those of you who can see it. He is an Iranian revolutionary. He's been part of a cell in organized resistance to overthrow the Ayatollah for a number of years. We interviewed him a few years back. We were able to get in touch with him again, and we interviewed him just a couple days ago. And one of the problems is every time they get hope, more people go out, and then they use military-grade weapons to kill every one of the protesters. And you could really hear the desperation in his voice, and my concern is that Trump does a very superficial attack, declares victory and bails. The attack is strong enough that Iranians think, hey, this is it. The regime's going to topple, and they all come out and protest, but not strong enough to do any significant damage to the regime. He doesn't even need to kill the Ayatollah or capture the Ayatollah, in Maduro style. What he really needs to do is destroy the weapon caches of the Iranian Republican Guard. If he can damage the Guard's weapon caches sufficiently, even Alex was like, we'll do the rest. But that's right now. The problem is they have military weapons. We outnumber them 100 to 1. But they have, fully automatic, M. Browning or whatever yeah. So I don't know. He's instituted the 25% tariff, which, by this point, I don't know how many tariffs we have on China. I can't keep. Oh God. Meanwhile, Kash Patel is being accused of covering up for the killing of Renee Good by an ICE agent. He reportedly instructed local investigators and prosecutors in Minnesota to kill the case. Now, he's not actually authorized to do that. So whether he's doing this with a wink and a nod, I don't know. But it's up to the state prosecutors whether they're going to prosecute it. It's up to the state police whether or not they're going to investigate it. But apparently he told both to stop. He gave as a reason that it would, quote, contradict Trump's claim that Good violently and willfully ran over an ICE officer. That was the reason he gave, according to 3 sources. Now, this is a problem for a number of reasons. First of all, the federal government, including the FBI, is still withholding the evidence. So they did the initial investigation of the crime scene, took all the evidence with them, and now the state prosecutors have very little to work with. And almost all, I have never heard of a situation where state prosecutors wanted the federal government's help and the FBI said no. For a state crime, by the way, the crime occurred in Minnesota. It's a state crime. It's not a federal crime. It's almost never a federal crime to murder someone, and that's deliberate. So Kash Patel at this point appears to be covering up the murder of Renee Good. So whether or not that would open him up to indictment at the state level, at least, because if he's telling state prosecutors to back off, if he's applying any pressure with them to back off, and if he's withholding evidence that could help in the prosecution, I don't know. But this has been all over social media. It's been over mainstream media a bit. I think everybody's just like, oh, a Trump official was putting pressure on someone to stop an investigation. Yeah. I've read this story before. So let me just see this real quick. Yeah. Right now, they are still working on the impeachment of Kristi Noem, but it seems to me that they've got more than they need for an impeachment of, at this point, Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel. So we'll see. The Tulsi Gabbard one, as I said, I'm really hoping that that's huge in the news tomorrow. We'll find out. It broke a little earlier today and seems to be extraordinarily serious. That, an intelligence leak in the White House. I don't know. It could be that a Russian agent in the White House was not leaking to Russia. I mean, who knows who Trump was calling? I don't know. But, could have been anyone. Putin. Sorry. Am I on? Yeah. Okay. Anyways, let's see. Moving on to the next story. Bill Clinton has agreed to testify without condition I think it was without condition. They were arguing over conditions, and then they said no conditions, and finally he said yes. Let me just double check on that. I think I think it's without conditions to testify before Congress under oath about Epstein. Now, there's sufficient evidence. I mean, we know he hung around Epstein. We know he went swimming in Epstein's pool. The evidence. It's really starting to get frustrating when people from MAGA think that I would protect, or any liberal that I know, anybody watching the show would protect Clinton because he's a Democrat. If he's done something criminal, he should be prosecuted just like everybody else. The reason they want us to have a double standard is because they have one and they need a justification for it. They say they care about, rapists, but real child rapists and pedophilia. But, since they don't, they kind of need us not to also. No, if Clinton's involved, get him with everybody else. I don't care. And I haven't found a single liberal anywhere who has said otherwise. Having said that, he clearly knew who Epstein was. He never called Epstein his best friend. He never gave interviews talking about Epstein. He clearly socialized with Epstein. In the 3 million pages of files that have been released about, in the 3 million Epstein pages. Oh, wow. Let me start that one more time. In the 3 million pages of the Epstein files that have been released, along with all of the sworn testimony in the Ghislaine Maxwell case and sworn depositions that were being taken in preparation for the Epstein case, and victim statements that have been made public either by the House committee or by the victims themselves, that I'm aware of, Clinton is accused of rape in one instance by one accuser. Doesn't make it excusable. He should go to jail for the rest of his life. But that's of all 3 million files of all the things. Trump is mentioned, I think it's a total of now 40,000 times. Called him his best friend. We share a little secret. Epstein was clearly recruiting out of Mar-a-Lago. Whether he had Trump's permission or not, we don't know. Depends on who you ask. But Trump admitted to liking women on the younger side, just like Epstein. Trump's other behavior and former conviction for was the civil for sexual battery, and the number of women that he's had to settle with for this kind of thing, and the many times that he said it's perfectly justifiable to objectify women, and walking in as 17-year-olds are changing, doing it deliberately. He's confessed this on air with Howard Stern. What made him think this was a good idea? I don't know. I have to admit, I'm a little surprised he hasn't had any consequences from it, but the two are not the same. And one is in office right now, the other one isn't. So great. Let's depose Clinton. I'm all for it. The other reason is because, and this was James Comer is purportedly freaking out because by saying yes, Trump has now set, Clinton has now set the precedent. Because if he's willing to testify, the question is then, why isn't Trump? Now, all of Trump's sycophants have the same story. They have to be, I swear to God, every morning they wake up, they email each other, what's today's defense for X, Y, and Z? And they all share it because it's identical. Well, he's been asked so many questions and he's answered all of them. Why should he have to do it before Congress? Because before Congress, if he lies, it's a felony. Because before Congress, he can be sworn in. And because Congress has evidence that they can compare it to. Don't play dumb. But apparently the head of the Speaker of the House has decided, because the Speaker of the House has said that, multiple committee members have said that. I don't know if Trump's representatives have said that, but I've heard that like by 6 different people so far. Well, he's answered every question ever put forward to him, not by Congress. And by the way, no, he hasn't. He's really good at not answering the question. You ask him a yes or no question. He's like, well, I've done more in this regard than just like, are you in the Epstein files? I've been more transparent than are you in the Epstein files? You know who's in the Epstein files? Clinton's in the Epstein files. Are you in the... Yeah. So, also, we've learned today that the U.S. State Department has decided that it is going to start funding MAGA-aligned think tanks and charities across Europe. Now, this has been seen by a number of Europeans as essentially an attempt to roll back civil liberties in Europe. We're not supposed to be messing in Europe. I thought the whole point was we were going to get out of Europe because it's weak, but the State Department is saying that this is about free speech. Senior State Department official Sarah Rogers traveled to Europe to meet with influential right-wing think tanks and spokesmen, and a key figure in Nigel Farage's populist Reform UK party about deploying a pool of money that would spread American values, which I'm very curious of what American values are because they seem very different today than they were. I have noticed American values don't seem to include helping people, for example. First of all, they do include threatening your allies. They include saying we don't rely on anyone and yet funding people if they're on the right and helping them. And the defunding of the USAID program has resulted in an estimated 600,000 deaths since it has been shut down about a year ago. 2/3 of those deaths have been children. It's obviously not about education. He's still trying to get rid of the Department of Education. It's not about food stamps. He's getting... So but our values is very curious. I'd like to know what they are. It's not children. And again, MAGA says it's protecting children, and that's why, oh, Donald Trump really is in there. Iran! And I wish I was kidding, but that's what it is. The Trump administration, in fact, in order to save money, so that apparently, and by the way, so far, the budget, after all the Doge cuts, after everything that they've done to save money, the amount of money spent last year, 2025, was equal to the amount of money that was budgeted to be spent last year. Well, if they made all these cuts and they weren't paying these employees and they did all these saving, where'd the money go? Well, we know where at least what is it, 250 million of it went. It went to purchase cluster bombs from Israel. But there's more. So let's see. The Trump administration has sought to drastically scale back U.S. foreign assistance, and cuts have fallen heavily on programs to support good governance, human rights, and democracy. He's scaling back all of that, but far right-wing parties, he's taking money and helping them. He has also told NASA that they are going to shut the OCO, the Orbiting Carbon Observatories. These are two satellites that orbit. One, I think, is actually physically attached to the International Space Station, and they, in real time, observe the carbon emissions and ocean temperature and the height of the oceans. So if the oceans just go up or down any amount, they measure it from space. And he has ordered NASA to shut them down. Shutting one of them down at a minimum means destroying it. It means they lower its orbit such that it collides with the Earth's atmosphere and is destroyed. That's not saving us any money, and the satellite's already up there. It's not like the satellite costs money to keep up there, and it's already collecting this data, but because it's about climate change, he wants to destroy it. By the way, farmers have protested his this move because they use the carbon dioxide emissions data from this satellite to predict how well their crops are going to grow. This is actually an extraordinarily important satellite in civilian uses, aside from its primary research, which is, in fact, of course, into global warming. But because it was put up ostensibly as is a global warming, and global warming, as we all know, is woke. It's woke to believe in science or reality. So he's going to destroy the satellite, and we don't know how they're going to dismantle the other one. They can just shut it off, but he's made it clear he doesn't want it shut off. He wants them destroyed. Because NASA offered to just shut the satellite off, and he said, no. We're taking the whole program is out, and you have to destroy the satellite. So that's what they're going to do. Let's see. Here, this was the list I was looking for. The satellites observe greenhouse gas monitoring, like OCO2 and OCO3, tracking carbon dioxide, and dedicated mission monitors for methane leaks, which, by the way, is extraordinarily important, if I recall, because methane leaks are extraordinarily dangerous in sea travel. They can create a hole right under the ship, and suddenly the ship falls 20 feet, and the ocean is gone. So this can predict those kinds of events and helps. So this has legitimate polar research. It uses satellites to measure heat loss at the poles, improving climate models. Also monitors natural hazards, land deformations, and ice sheet changes, and has specialized sensors which are actually being repurposed to track wildfire and volcanic activity. Our two best satellites at this, ordered to be destroyed by Donald Trump. So what is his values? What are our values? That's an interesting question. We know Christian nationalism is on the rise, and we've heard a lot about it. But, and you will see on our Discord an article that unfortunately I didn't have time to get into about basically making it illegal to not be married. An idea, I think, coming out of the Heritage Foundation that you should be married. But the Heritage Foundation has come up with a number of ideas and recently published a plan to stabilize America and ensure that America thriving into the next 250 years, which is an interesting number. Let me see if I can get my glasses. I need my glasses to read this level of BS. And I think this came out like 2 or 3 days ago. To end America's family crisis, policymakers and civic leaders should treat restoring the family home as a matter of justice, driven by two truths. The first is that all children have a right to the affection and protection of the man and woman who created them. The second is that the ideal environment in which to exercise this right is a loving and stable home with their married biological parents. In contrast, the default in American culture today is to put the desire of adults over the needs of children. Children are too often Epstein. Sorry. Was that me? This is the Heritage Foundation. Their champion, Donald Trump, of whom is protecting Epstein. Oh, dear Lord. Do I really have to finish this? I do? Okay. Sorry, this level of hypocrisy is mind-blowing. In contrast, the default in American culture today is to put the desires of adults over the needs of children. Children are too often called to sacrifice what is due to them, the presence of their mom and dad under the same roof for the entirety of their childhood. The only way for America to thrive is to rebuild the family. Now, I'd like to point out that despite Trump's best efforts, we're still the most powerful and wealthy country on the planet. We are heading down. We are in decline. There's a number of metrics that show that, and we're absolutely going down, and it started as soon as Trump was elected. One of the reasons is he wants to eliminate the middle class, and he wants to just have sort of what he thinks is going to be his class, the ultra-wealthy, mostly technocrats and everybody else. This is why, by the way, too, if you look on our Discord, there's a number of articles. I'm not going to get into it all, but this plan and Heritage is now coming out with their 2026 plan. We're getting hints of what they're planning on for 2026, but it includes the elimination of things like mass transit. We've already had attacks on mass transit. We had the attempt to stop the on one of the main freeways in New York, trying to get people to take the New York subway station as opposed to, so they upped the tolls, and the federal government sued to stop that. The federal government now is proposing that if you receive federal funds, you cannot have free buses in your state if you receive federal transportation funds. So any state taking transportation funds from the federal government will not be allowed to have free buses. You're going to have to offset some of your costs by charging people to use the bus. This is a direct assault on the ability of people who maybe can't afford a car to be able to get jobs and have mobility and get better jobs and even make their lives better. This is going to help families in the wealthiest country in the world. Why are we this is, wow, America's not broke. Let's fix it. In addition to that, they are proposing multiple pieces of legislation, including getting rid of the 50-50 split in divorces and making it illegal for a divorce to have a 50-50 split, that the split is based on who contributed the most. This significantly is a detriment to women, as still today women are earning less than men in the household. So this would disincentivize a woman from leaving her man, but not a man from leaving a woman. It also gets rid of the no-fault divorce. Another move, presumably attempted to make it harder for people to get divorced. So even if mom and dad hate each other and want to murder each other, better that than they split up and find a way to co-raise the child. So a lot of super chats. I am going to get to that in the memberships, but I would like to, before we get to that, one last thing to sort of try to tie all this together, which is really hard because it's actually like herding cats in a tornado. We're talking about American values. How do these people see American values? They see American values apparently as Christian nationalists, which is to say that racism is fine, violence is encouraged because it's a way to weed out the weak. That's why ICE is encouraged to be violent. Mafioso type rule. Pete Hegseth was given the opportunity to speak, and in fact, he spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast on February 5th, so that's just a couple days ago, and I'm going to read from his speech. He gave two speeches. The first was shortly after Donald Trump gave a rambling speech that went more than an hour over the allotted time. But I think this speech explains what we're looking at, and the fact that this is the Secretary of Defense speaking at a purportedly Christian national prayer breakfast speaks volumes. Quote, America was founded as a Christian nation. It remains a Christian nation in our DNA, if we can keep it. And as public officials, we have a sacred duty, 250 years on, to glorify them. So he is quoting directly from the Heritage Foundation's release on how to make America thrive for the next 250 years by securing marriage and yada, yada, yada. So he's getting this directly from the Heritage Foundation. Our sacred duty, 25 years on, to glorify him, pointing up into the sky. That's precisely why we instituted a monthly prayer service at the Pentagon, an act of what we see as spiritual readiness. We talk a lot about peace through strength, but we also need to remember that we derive our strength through faith and through truth and through the Word of God. He then read from a passage from Mark 8. Christ's mission was to, and then continues his speech, Christ's mission was to divide truth from lies, the things of the world from the things of God, light from darkness, good from evil, and like Christ in the earthly ways, our brave warriors are not called to appease the world. They must confront it. We know we fight a physical battle, but ultimately grounded, as the president said, in a spiritual battlefield. Not only are we warriors armed with the arsenal of freedom, ultimately we are armed with the arsenal of faith and have been from the beginning. So, in that cause, we live the motto of our great nation, in God we trust. The willingness to make sacrifices on behalf of one's country is born in one thing, the deep and abiding faith in God's love for us and his promise of eternal life. The passage says, for whoever would save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake and for the gospel's will save it. The warrior who is willing to lay down his life for his unit, his country, and his creator, that warrior finds eternal life. To preserve the soul of America, we must continue to wield not just the physical sword, but the sword of truth. Unafraid and unabashed in this fight, we must remember every single day, especially in this town, that all power, honor, and glory belongs to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Christ is King, and may God bless our warriors. May God bless our great republic in these United States of America. That was Pete Hegseth, February 5th, at the National Prayer Breakfast after the president had spoken. He was given a second opportunity to give the closing remarks, and this is what he said. My feelings as a Christian point me to my Lord and Savior as a fighter. It points me to a man who, once in loneliness, surrounded only by a few followers, summoned men to fight God's truth. It was to fight. God's truth was the greatest, not as sufferer, but as fighter. In boundless love, as Christian and as a man, I read through the passages which tell us how the Lord at last rose, his might, and seized the scourge to drive out the temple and the brood of vipers and adders. How terrific was his fight. Today, after 2,000 years, with the deepest emotion, I recognize more profoundly than ever the fact that it was that he had to shed his blood upon the cross. As a Christian, I have no duty to allow myself to be attacked. I have a duty to be a fighter for truth and justice. And if there is anything for which we could demonstrate that, anything that could demonstrate that we are acting rightly, it is the distress that grows daily. For as a Christian, I also have a duty to our people. And when I look and see inflation rising and a corrupt state, and when I go out in the morning and see men whose jobs have been taken by immigrants, then I believe I would be no Christian but the devil if I did not do what our Lord commanded 2,000 years ago and turn those by whom today this poor people are plundered and exploited. That was Pete Hegseth and what? Sorry. What? Oh, that was Adolf Hitler? April 12th, 1922? Oh, sorry about that. Apologies. That last one was not Hegseth. I guess he only spoke once. That was the first one. So to Adolf Hitler, apologies for conflating you with Pete Hegseth. I'll try not to do that again. So let me go check out the super chats. And yeah, if that doesn't scare you, nothing will. Let's see here. Now, working but listening. Have a good show. Slava Ukraine. $20 from Dunk on You. Thank you so much, Dunk. It really does. It keeps us going. We're an independent channel, and the only. Yeah, I may have gotten us demonetized for a little while, Titan. That may have. You know, the algorithm's not a fan of quoting Hitler on. And so as to not give it away, like when he was talking about stagnant wages, I just changed the word to inflation. But, you know, for the most part, it was pretty accurate. Yeah, the blasphemy laws are going to come back. Anyways, thank you. Heroyam Slava и спасибо большое, Dunk on You. Also, Dunk on You gifted 5 in-time memberships. Papa Dutch, we're trying to get Slavi over here. She's live now. I know she's live, and I know the shills were live earlier, and it's one of those things where, you know, I hate it when we end up sort of, you know, crossing, but you never know when we're going to go on. And so far, every day, it's like, is this going to be one of the days where I don't have to do a news update at 9 p.m.? Nope. Sorry. Tulsi Gabbard, turns out, was hiding information that a foreign intelligence was talking to someone directly, like, associated with Trump. And she just passed that information to the White House and then buried it. Yep, we're going to have to talk about that. Tapioca Weasel, smash that like button. Thank you so much for that. Definitely, and thank you for your continued support. 37 months. Thank you, good sir. I'm going to try not to do any flat Earth jokes. It's hard. It's hard. I have to restrain myself. Stephen gifted 1 in time. Thank you, Stephen 800 for your gift of 1 membership. Daddy Jim UA, 10 pounds British sterling, flooding the public with nonsense to hide some truths. It's well, and the other scary thing was we showed this to the clips of what's his name, the former director at ICE, and Katie Noem giving roughly the same speech about what happened to Pratt. And it was, you know, he brandished a gun, he came at him, he was intent on murdering as many of them as possible. And it's like, there was no evidence yet. No, in fact, there was actually, if you looked on social media, 5 minutes after this happened, it was all over social media. So if they had taken 5 minutes to look at social media before, they'd have known their entire narrative was utter BS. They don't care. And the fact that Kash Patel could actually, with a straight face, and 2 Minnesota prosecutors say, you can't do this prosecution because there's a risk it could contradict Trump's earlier statements. That's the if fascism, folks, we've crossed the line. We crossed the line a while ago, but public policy is now based around making sure you don't embarrass the leader. That's every fascist, despotic, just pick a nightmare. Thank you for that. Karaki 73, 10 Tap the like button gently if you please. Yes, I like all YouTubers have to go through the please like, subscribe, and share. Sharing is the other biggie. If you think this is good content, share it with other people. The bigger we grow, the better we get at this. The more we have of it, the more people helping, and it helps us to stay on the air. I will tell you this too. When channels get bigger, they tend to get slapped with the copyright strikes less. I have friends who manage to get away with a lot more than we can just because they've got the subscribers. YouTube, yeah. Paul Gilbert, member 5 months. Any group that tolerates me for 5 months must be full of good people. It's a tough world. It's a tough time for the world at the moment. We need good leadership. We do. And somebody pointed this out, and they say this all the time, and it's usually true, but nonetheless, I don't know how to deal with it, which is that the left is doing a lot of criticizing of Trump, but they're not coming up with their own ideas. All right. There is a lot of truth to that. Having said, and that's a common problem, and that's when the left loses, is when they don't come up with any good ideas, when they're just like, well, hey, we're not the right, which admittedly is a plus, but it can't be your sole platform. Having said that, I'd like to see what anybody could come up with that could be a positive message that you could run as a platform that could withstand the echo chamber of lies, denial of reality, and everything else. If reality doesn't matter anymore, you've only got one platform, which is restoring reality, restoring truth, actually talking, like making sure the balance is set back to the way it's supposed to be. That's the only platform you can run on. Is there another platform that's more important? Not that I can think of right now. So, yeah. All right. Let's see. Karaki gifted 1 membership. Thank you very much for that. You've all been a huge help. Thank you very much. Join us on the Discord. You'll see more there. We're following a lot. Like I said, I'm hoping Tulsi Gabbard ends up being a thing, but at this point, I missed 2 things I want to hit real quick. First, can't believe I missed this one. The FBI has called representatives for electoral representatives for each of the 50 states into a meeting to occur at an unknown location sometime at the end of this month. The general consensus is that this is kind of a holy shit moment, and the reason is because the federal government is barred from interfering with the even elections for federal office at the state level. This is in the Constitution, and it was written this way deliberately. The whole point was the state gets to decide themselves how they're going to do their own elections, and actually made it legal where, at one point, this became an issue. The governor himself could just say, all our electors are going to who I like. I don't care how the people voted. And they can do that because the Constitution says it's up to the state. So, and the legislatures of each state comes up with their own rules for how they do it. This system sucks ass because what it means is every state has its own different way of doing it. They have different candidates, different types of ballots. Some are electronic, some are this, some are that. And then within the states, it's bad because poorer districts don't receive the same funding. So they get the old machines that shut down inadvertently that don't work. And they get the pollsters that have to leave as soon as the polls close so they don't get to vote. And it's hard to find a federal solution to this because the feds can't get involved and say, we're going to have uniform standards. So, but the reason this is done this way is because it's harder to rig 50 elections than it is to rig 1. And especially whereas you're voting for president, if any government agency that the president resides over could have a say in that election in one way or another, then the president could ensure he could never be voted out. That's how dictatorships continue. In an explicit desire to avoid that scenario, elections were left out of the federal government's hands because we're choosing the federal government and they don't get a say in how we choose them. Trump is wants representatives from every one of the 50 states to meet with the FBI to discuss the upcoming midterms. This is unprecedented. This has never happened before. And people are already worried about government tampering, especially with the Fulton County raid that included Tulsi Gabbard, who had absolutely no business being there because she's not. She works in national intelligence. That's actually, she, like the CIA, that's counterintelligence information, but that's not, what the hell was she doing there? We still don't know. We don't know if Congress has asked her, but at any rate, we're going to keep an eye on that. You'll see that in our Discord. The other interesting thing, and this is the kind of thing that we all know that the redactions were inadequate, but proving that they were deliberately redacting for Donald Trump is difficult. It's obvious, but it's difficult to prove it. This document did it, and it was Titan who caught this. There's something very interesting about this document. If you take a look at this, the question, okay, Jeffrey Epstein, now, unless he's talking to a victim, whoever he's talking to shouldn't be redacted, but they are. But there's something else here redacted. I blank think. So, fair enough. So somebody else pointed it out to Titan. And since I was dying to take credit for it and to say, oh, okay, but I unfortunately had to give Titan credit. Here's the question. What's the word that's redacted? I think anyone who speaks English knows what the word that's redacted is. The word is don't. I don't think. What are the first three letters of the word don't? D-O-N. This is a document that has been run through an automatic redactor that redacts any word that begins with the letters D-O-N. So, I'm probably going to send this to, they may have already figured it out. We've sent some things to the committee. It's kind of, it almost feels like an act of ego or arrogance to sit there and think that we cracked the code that somebody else didn't. But that's the kind of thing people, that's a great notice. That's why I wanted to put that. I think that was just a spectacular catch, and so we've already notified them of some things. I'm going to send that one up to them, and that's where we are. Anyways, thank you all so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next show. Thank you all for your support. I hope you have a marvelous evening, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good night.